Well, here we are today, everybody, with Dr. Stephen Barrie, who is with an incredibly revolutionary company that if you haven't heard of them yet, you certainly will. And the company is called VIOME. So, Stephen, thank you so much for being here today.
Oh, you're more than welcome. It's exciting to be able to share my experiences and what we're doing with your listeners.
And can you just share a little bit of an insight of your background and what you actually do?
Sure. So the quick summary, I've been very blessed to have a very clear mission of what I wanted to accomplish in life. And that was to be able to provide people with information from a healthcare perspective that they could understand how to make better choices in their life. I did that as a physician. I did that in founding a company called Genova Diagnostics, which gave tools to people and physicians to help them understand what they can do to lower their risk of disease in the future and how they can help any current health conditions that they have.
Yeah, and what you did with Genova, was that not the world's largest clinical disease laboratory?
Correct. Yep.
Fantastic.
And I've been fortunate in that, which we'll talk later about the microbiome, but this has been a passion of mine for 35 years, I guess, and I've been able to be part of it starting in its kind of infancy and then seeing where we are today. And then we'll talk more about the incredible place that we're at today and why we're there today and why we can know so much more than we did 35 years ago.
Fantastic. And, now you're working with Naveen Jain. And for our viewers and listeners who don't know Naveen Jain, just Google the name and you're going to see who this gentleman is. And how did that relationship come to be for the two of you to actually be on this mission to make chronic illness a choice for humanity?
Right. And that's our mission. It sounds like a kind of a lofty goal. The truth is, and the reason I came back from China to join Naveen and the incredible team he's put together, is that we will be one of the companies that actually help accomplish that. Naveen, as people will see if they watch some of his video interviews and podcasts, is a force of nature. He's a philanthropist billionaire, formed many companies, and VIOME is his way of giving back. So a number of years ago, he decided he wanted to do some more disrupting. And what was an industry that needed disruption? And I think all of us could say, oh, healthcare, that's not kind of working out so well for people here in the United States. It costs a lot of money and we're kind of unhealthy. So that was his mission. He was able to acquire some technology and then this incredible team of people around him. And we're now about 175 strong, actually, to help accomplish that. And my connection was through our chief medical officer, Helene Messier, who's a functional medicine doc and was former CMO at Human Longevity Institute with Craig Ventnor. And I've known her for a long time through the functional medicine world. And I've been following VIOME from China. And when I realized it was just time for me to come back from China, I accomplished everything I wanted to accomplish there. Helen and I connected, and it was just an obvious place for me to come back to. And to work with Naveen, it's just this amazing blessing to have all this energy and all the goodwill behind what we're doing.
Yeah, it's incredible. Like we were talking earlier, I've had the opportunity over the last year or so to be around Naveen a few different times, and he has this graceful presence about him, but there is also this presence that you do not mess with because he is only going one way. And that way is not only with healthcare, but also to the moon.
Right. Yes. And I work 5 feet from him, so I both contribute to that direction, and I get pulled along in that direction. And you mentioned the moon. Yeah, one of Naveen's other companies is Moon Express, which is the only company that has the legal landing rights on the moon from the U.S. government. And not Bezos, not Branson, not Elon Musk, who are all his good friends. But Moon Express is the only company that actually is legally allowed to land on the moon. Everyone else can send rockets up around the moon, but he can land. And I guess they will be landing later this year.
That is just incredible. Now, share with us what VIOME actually is. So we've got the mission, but what is the actual application for somebody watching or listening to this?
Sure. And if why don't I spend just 30 seconds talking about what in the world the microbiome is, because that's our focus.
Terrific.
So the microbiome, and people have been reading about it, probably hearing about it, are one-celled organisms that live everywhere. our entire planet is an ecosystem of the microbiome. They live in the air, they live in the water, they live in the soil. It's what helps plants grow properly. It's how we can make beer. It's why we can make bread. And it's this incredibly interconnected, complex ecosystem, which is absolutely necessary for the health of the planet. And bringing it down to us, on animals, we have this microbiome, which consists of, by the way, bacteria, parasites, fungi, yeast, viruses, and phages. Okay, this is what we call the microbiome. And they live on our skin. They're what's involved in the aging of the skin and skin diseases and conditions, actually. They live in our eyes, our nose, our ears, our mouth. And what we're most interested in is our gastrointestinal tract. And amazingly, there are 40 trillion of them. That's 40 with a lot of zeros. That is 1,000 times more than all the human cells in our body. It's more than all the stars you can see in our known universe, actually. So an incredible amount of them. And besides just there being so many, their metabolic DNA genetic activity is actually 1,000 times more than the human cells. So they are, in fact, more, they're doing more activity than our heart, everything else in the body. And so that's interesting, right? But what does that mean? Well, it turns out, and this is research really only that we've really developed in the past, actually 4 years, that the microbiome is at the root cause of virtually every chronic disease: diabetes, obesity, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, heart disease, autism, autoimmune diseases. They all start in the intestines with our microbiome balance. And we'll talk more about why that is. So VIOME, okay, which is the only company in the world that can do this because of some licensed technology we have from the Los Alamos National Federal Laboratories, we actually can tell everything that's there, all those bacteria, viruses, fungi, phages, parasites. But more importantly, we can tell what they're doing. Are they active? Are they inactive? Are they producing the right metabolites, right chemicals? Are they producing the wrong chemicals? So we can actually tell the activity of what's happening there, this is the first time this is available to consumers or to physicians.
That is, and it sounds like, just to create a little bit more of a relatedness to the topic, there's a lot of talk right now about gut health and leaky gut, and VIOME really provides the scientific data on what's appropriate for you to have in your gut and what's not. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because one of the great tools with the VIOME product is that it actually provides you with a customized diet plan.
Right. So now, if we take the fact that we have all this data about what's living there, what's active, what's inactive, that's interesting, right? But that doesn't allow us to solve any particular health problem for ourselves. And I think you had asked earlier, what problems does VIOME solve for people? We solve how they can have good health today, improve their health now, and lower the risk in the future for chronic disease. And it's a very straight path from understanding the activity of the microbiome and the diversity of the microbiome. By the way, there are 8,000 species of bacteria that live there. And the more species you have, which we call diversity, the more your diversity, okay, the better health you have and the better healthy aging that you'll have. Okay, so we take all this information, and through artificial intelligence and machine learning, we come up with a diet which is personalized for you. And here's the important thing. There is no universal healthy diet. That's why there are all these books, and a new one comes out every month, and people switch to that one because the other one didn't work. Whether it's keto or high carb, low carb, high protein, low protein, what was the South Beach diet, whatever. And I've written some of them. But the idea is it doesn't work for everybody because what you should be eating depends on your state of microbiome. And to take that an amazing step further is that there's no universal healthy food for everybody. So for years, I would talk to people about, let's say, broccoli. Broccoli has sulforaphane in it, an anti-cancer a polyphenol. It has all these great phytochemicals in it. Everybody should be eating broccoli 3 times a week, I would say. And I did, right? Well, it turns out that for about 30% of the population, their microbiome actually creates toxic chemicals from, quote, the good phytochemicals in broccoli. So they should not be eating broccoli because it's actually very harmful. It actually can, for example, lead to leaky gut, irritates the gut wall. Avocado, healthy fat, right? We should eat avocado, not eat red meat, because it has anti-inflammatory fat versus a pro-inflammatory fat. It turns out that a big segment of the population, depending on the microbiome, should not be eating avocado at this time. The good news is, when you follow a recommended diet based on the VIOME test, you will increase your diversity, rebalance the good flora versus the bad flora, and then over time, you'll be able to reintroduce broccoli or avocado or whatever might have been a bad food for you at the time. So it's a very straightforward progression to what someone should eat a lot of, a little bit of, a moderate amount of, and avoid.
Yeah, it's interesting because, throughout my personal journey in my weight loss and restoring my body back to where it should be, exercise and nutrition was one thing. And now when you really look at it, any of those diets, I was speaking with JJ Virgin about this 2 weeks ago. And she's like, David, we know all of these diets work for weight loss. However, it's actually having people stick to those. So that's the one issue. And then what we're talking about in this conversation is for overall customized optimal health.
Right. And you mentioned weight loss. So weight loss is not particularly calorie dependent, really. It's inflammation dependent. So our diet is not a weight loss diet. We don't talk about that for weight loss. Yet, I guess about 5 weeks ago now, Dr. Oz did a 45-minute special on VIOME. And unbeknownst to us, he had several months before taken some overweight people from his audience. They did the test, followed the VIOME recommendations. And these 2 women who appeared on the show when we were there, each had lost something like 65, 70 pounds apiece. They didn't pay attention to calories. They just paid attention to which foods were going to lower their inflammation, which foods they avoided, which would have raised their inflammation. So the scientific beauty of what we do, the exciting thing is we can tell all these pathways that are involved that are what these bacteria, the microbiome, actually create. Okay, so they might create chemicals that we call upregulate inflammation. Okay, we don't want to have inflammation upregulated because those chemicals then circulate throughout the whole body. So we can downregulate them. We can get those chemicals to be stopped by changing the diet. In terms of how we feel, and we talked a little bit about that earlier, is it's only this past year that we've realized that the microbiome, these bacteria, produce 90% of our serotonin. That's the chemical the brain uses to feel good. If you don't make enough serotonin, you feel depressed. That was unknown. Everyone assumed serotonin was made in other places, but it's the microbiome which is creating the serotonin, as many other hormones. In fact, we now understand that probably 80% of what our brain does is following instructions from the microbiome, not independent thought. Only 20%, we might call it independent thought. 80% is being followed by the chemical signals sent through this gut-brain axis up the vagus nerve and then through the bloodstream. Unknown before. It's just staggering.
That opens up a whole nother conversation that maybe we could get into in another time, but I would love for you to actually explain. You hear a lot about inflammation these days. It's very much, I don't want to coin it as a buzzword, but you do hear that a lot in the health world. Can you just explain and kind of deconstruct what inflammation actually is and the impact it has on people's mental and physical health?
Sure. And there's a reason why perhaps it's getting more attention now in the lay press and stuff. Inflammation is one of the causes of virtually every disease. So if we look at heart disease, it's not being caused by too much cholesterol or whatever. It's being caused by inflammation, which is narrowing the arteries. If we look at various brain conditions and things, what's happening is the arteries and the capillaries in the brain are getting narrow. So it's inflammation, which is at a root cause of so many diseases. So we want to control the inflammation. Again, if someone has arthritis, so, Western medicine often treats arthritis with a drug which temporarily reduces inflammation, right? Now, it turns out that that same drug actually irritates the gut wall and causes a leaky gut, which allows more toxin to get into the body, which triggers more of an inflammatory cascade, which means that person will take that drug, non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drug, forever. Because it does reduce the pain a little bit, right? But it also makes sure they always are going to have that pain. So by manipulating the microbiome, we can change those pathways, these chemical signals that cascade into inflammation throughout the entire body.
That's incredible. That is incredible. And I'd like to get into, a big part of what we do with Mind Body Reset is focusing on the mental health and people's relationship with themselves. And, we were speaking about that earlier, but I'd love for you to point to or point out a few different aspects of how VIOME actually has affected the quality of people's mental state for performance and overall enjoyment of life.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Well, so there's an interesting, very direct connection, and as most things, it's a two-way connection, right? So it's the microbiome, the chemical mediator signal is being sent out, okay, and then how we feel and how we react, how we exercise, then also sends signals back to the microbiome, and they pay attention to that. So in terms of how we feel, I quickly mentioned the hormone serotonin. Okay, so that's always been implicated in depression, joy, how we feel. And Western medicine in the past has prescribed drugs which attempted to increase the production in the brain of serotonin. Now we know we can do that with the microbiome. So we can tell if someone is deficient as a down-regulated pathway for all those chemicals which are going to have us feel good. Okay, and then we can change those pathways through manipulating the microbiome through food and prebiotics and probiotics, and then people start to feel better. As they feel better, then they're able to accomplish their dietary goals, they're able to accomplish their relationship goals, they're able to work on the heart rate variability, they're able to do more exercise. All this starts to benefit the microbiome because the microbiome is paying attention to all these other activities and incorporating those things in what it is thinking and feeling. We've all heard the expression, a gut feeling, right? Listen to your gut. It turns out that it's true. And we go back 1,000 years or more, Hippocrates, kind of the, if you will, the father, mother of modern medicine, said all disease, all illness starts in the gut. And interestingly, I was just speaking in Qatar in the Middle East at the Futures Now conference, and people there pointed out to me that the Quran, Muhammad actually said the same thing, independent of what Hippocrates said. In the Quran, they showed me the passage that said the gut is the source of all illness. Who knew that? So people have kind of suspected this for a long time, and with our amazing technology today, we can not only suspect it, but we can actually see how it's happening and what it's doing.
That's incredible, because the statistics that really get me, that are so widely, it seems to be celebrated in the sense of the amount of money that's coming in to affect the issue. And what I'm talking about is mental health. And, in Canada, we just had someone donate $100 million to the Canadian Mental Health organization. And I look at that number when we have 37 million people in Canada, and it makes no sense to me. And then you have 43.8 million Americans dealing with mental health issues. And I was like, there's no way. We are not born to suffer this way. But you look at the North American diet, no, and social media and work stress, we could talk for a long time on that.
Many contributions, obviously. This
exactly.
is multifactorial.
And this, what you're up to with VIOME, to me, makes complete sense to actually support altering those numbers so that statistic is dramatically lowered.
Right. Yeah. So, as we said, we have this multifactorial, right? And we can't control many of those things right away, but we can control our choices of food. So that's the beauty of VIOME and the intervention strategy. This we can control. We can make a commitment to follow the recommendations, and just simply by making different food choices. We don't have to change where we work. We don't have to change the air we're breathing necessarily, all these other stresses that are happening. But we can change this, which turns out to be at the foundation of the main contributor of all those things. All disease is the interaction of our genetic potential and the environment. I mean, all disease is that. There are very few, quote, just, rare genetic diseases that the environment has nothing to do with it. Everything else is genetic potential, increased risk, decreased risk, and exposure to the environment, which either increases the risk or decreases it. So one of the big factors in when I use the term environment is the food that we eat, the food that we don't eat. And a healthy diet, most people really know, what a broad healthy diet is. Yep, I shouldn't eat donuts all the time and ice cream, and Coke. I get it, and I probably should eat more fruit and more vegetables and and less processed food. I mean, that is kind of common sense. I mean, a 6-year-old knows that, right? But beyond that, the key thing is what's someone's individual response to what we consider the healthy foods, and that's where understanding the role of microbiome becomes the important player.
Now, if someone is really looking to take on their health in a whole new way and cause a transformation for themselves, would you suggest starting with VIOME, or would you actually have them go and get on a healthy diet and then implement VIOME at a later date? Like, what would your recommendation be?
Well, and I'm good. This is not self-serving at all, because basically, by the way, we're on this mission to get 1 million people to do it, because that's how we're going to solve the whole chronic illness thing. So we don't particularly make money on what we're doing. This is our service. You need to start with the VIOME, because you wouldn't know what a healthy diet is. If you recall, a year ago, I would have said, okay, David, I got a healthy diet for you. I want you to eat, the Mediterranean diet. Healthy diet. I want you to eat more broccoli, I want you to eat avocado, nuts and seeds and mushrooms, and lower your red meat production, have a glass of wine. That's what I would have told you. Well, I wouldn't tell you that today, because it's not true, because I wouldn't know what's right for you in that general Mediterranean diet, healthy triangle. Okay, so we want to be able to pick which of the vegetables are right for you, which of the fruits are right for you, which of the mushrooms and seeds are right for you, which is a good source of protein for you, right? Without that, you have a 40% chance of being right. So you want to start there, and that's going to help you feel better, right? It's going to reduce symptoms that you might have of being tired or being bloated or inflammation, being overweight, having flare-ups from an autoimmune disease, irritable bowel syndrome or colitis. So it's going to reduce your flare-ups. So when you start feeling better, you can then start making better choices, right? And now you can expand your health journey to incorporate more exercise, more meditation, all the other things that one can do, spirituality. Now you have more energy, if you will, and you have more of a positive attitude to start doing more. So that would be my approach. And again, it's not self-serving, because that's just a logical approach to do it.
Well, yeah, and it certainly sounds like it, because this will actually provide people with the foundation around the fuel that they're actually putting into their body, and leave no questions. There's actually be no questions if they take the VIOME test. Correct.
It's just a specific list of the foods that you should eat, avoid, eat a lot of, eat a little of. And beyond that, we also talk about, what pre or probiotics someone should be taking. okay, specifically. So, I mean, let's talk about probiotics. People have heard this term, and we knew a long time ago that yogurt was maybe a good source, maybe. But today it's an $18 billion a year business with hundreds of brands and thousands of choices, and nobody has a clue what they should be taking. You go look at the store, and there's this bottle that has these five bacteria in it. There's this one has 25. Oh, maybe that's better. This one has 3. They say these ones are really good, right? You have no idea if that's what you need. Those may be, in general, the good bacteria that are related to good health, but you don't know if you're lacking those. You don't know what's out of balance. So, and they don't even colonize. So a lot of money being spent on probiotics, not quite sure what they're doing. So
exactly. Like, I am a perfect example of what you're talking about. As I went to lose, as I'm still going to lose like the last kind of 5% body fat, to where I ideally want to be. I walked into the health food store. I'm like, yeah, I should probably get a probiotic just to, support my system.
Right.
And I blew up like a balloon. I was eating impeccably and going to the gym, but I just bloated right up over a 2-week period, and I had no idea what it was. And then I spoke with a nutritionist that I know, and she's like, it's probably your probiotic. You should take that out. And what do you know? In 3 days, I completely deflated back to where I was.
Well, do you remember when you went to the store to buy them? There's a whole shelf of them, right?
Oh, this big fridge full of them.
Well, okay, now there's some in the fridge, and then there are all these ones that you don't need to have in the fridge. So now it's a question: it should be refrigerated, should be refrigerated. But everyone's a different formula. How would anybody know what to take? I mean, you could buy by price. I'll buy the cheapest one. I'll buy the most expensive one. No relationship to for you what's right. So that's where, again, personalized medicine, precision medicine, those are buzzwords these days, but again, common sense, right? I want to get something that's personalized for me. I don't want to get something that's good for that person over there. So VIOME, fortunately, our technology allows us to take a look at and recommend which specific bacteria for you are going to make the most difference in, changing the pathways that are overproducing the bad stuff, or changing pathways to make you produce more of the good stuff. And by the way, that's the same with what's called prebiotics. So probiotics are the actual bacteria, right? Prebiotics are the fuel, the food for the bacteria. And there are certain foods, typically foods with certain kinds of fiber, that are the good food for the bacteria. And you need that. You can't just take it because they'll just die off. You need to also provide them the food that they need. The same personalized thing. I used to give people a list of the 10 best probiotic foods: leeks, garlic, onions, Jerusalem artichokes, etc. Well, it may that those foods may have been really bad for them from the microbiome point of view. So now the VIOME test allows us to say, okay, of these, 15 foods that are usually good fuel for your bacteria, these 3 are the ones you should be eating, and you should avoid these because they're going to have the opposite effect. Even though they're good fuel in general, your microbiome converting them to bad chemicals. So that's personalized medicine in its simplest, most direct form.
Yeah, and it's for me, and just for anybody listening or watching, I'm not getting a referral fee or anything like that for the promotion of VIOME. But ever since I came out and speaking with Naveen, I have been completely enamored with and entrenched in understanding the company and how this product actually works, because I so believe that this is a huge tool that people can utilize. And what are you guys doing, and the whole team at VIOME doing, to actually have this be a common brand? So everyone's like, oh, you haven't done VIOME? You got to go do that.
Well, we've been very fortunate in that that a lot of top influencers around the world have understood our message, have tried VIOME, seen the results, and whether these are people who are some of the bigger names in the medical community, whether people like Deepak Chopra, people like Dr. Oz, on and on, people felt that this was important. They saw the results, they understood why, and we've been very fortunate that they've been around the world, telling people about what we're doing. There's this active presence on Facebook. There's all kinds of articles in the Wall Street Journal on futurism, videos all the time about what we're doing. So we've been very, very fortunate in getting some amazing publicity, I think deserved. And then, of course, folks like you, thousands of people like you who have been sharing what we're doing with their listeners, because they understand what the connection is to the people that they want to help. And again, it gets back to, we're all trying to do the same thing. We want to help people with information to make good choices, to have a better life for themselves, their family, and that affects, then it just spreads out like that into the community.
Yeah, you got it. And that really brings me to my last question before we get into the last round. But how would you actually define health for someone or for yourself?
So, I think in terms of wellness, okay, so health is both in our mind, our love, our heart, and our physical wellness. And it's one in absence of disease. It's filling my life with joy, and minimizing my risk of getting disease in the future. But I think the key part is joy and happiness, mission and vision, being clear on why I'm here, what my role on the planet, why was I born, and how do I make the best use of whatever time I have. To me, that's health. Whether it lasts a day or another 50 years, how cool would that be? But whatever it is, I just want to be able to be happy and joyous and sharing my vision with people.
That's incredible.
So that to me is health.
Yeah, when we first hopped on the call, we went on a totally different trajectory for the call for a minute there, talking about a return to love and A Course in Miracles, and I'm sure we could talk about that for a long time, because
it's all connected, right?
Well, that's the thing. It is all connected. Absolutely. And then that brings me to a few remaining questions that I have for you. And what is the most impactful book, non-medical book, that you've read that's impacted the actual quality of your life?
Well, actually, maybe I have a strange answer for that, because the book actually, or the author is that great Japanese author Harakumi Murakami. Do you know him?
I don't.
And just finished reading a book called Hard Boiled Wonderland. Okay, he's a very unusual Japanese author, just in this very odd alternative world. And the reason I picked that is because it just inspires me to be creative. I read this and it's so different and unusual. I just go, wow, and then how do I incorporate, that ability to be creative and look for things that no one's thought of yet, and look out and bring those things back to the present world. So that's how he inspires me. That's kind of maybe a strange way to answer it. That allows me to do the best job I can.
That's fantastic. And yeah, there are no strange answers.
I'm a strange guy.
And what's the most consistent element of your overall health? What's the most consistent practice that you have?
Well, dietary choices and a smoothie. And I say that because I've been making a smoothie for about 35, 40 years every morning. And ingredients vary, but usually about 45 or 50 ingredients in it. And I hate swallowing capsules. So every capsule, it takes me like a half hour to make my breakfast, my smoothie. I open up every capsule and put it in. And that's my most consistent health habit is this smoothie, which changes from time to time as my body changes. I do testing and stuff to understand what I need. And as I've gotten older, there's more paying attention to things that might help with healthy aging and mitochondria, energy, and stuff like that. But my kids, everybody just laughs at me because I still do it. They're eating waffles and I'm eating my smoothie.
And what do you want most for people?
To be able to have information to make choices. So none of us can do anything for anybody. We can't force them to do anything. all I believe we can do is help them understand their choices, hopefully inspire them, right, to make good choices. But it's up to them. But give them the information, inspire them, and then it's up to them.
Fantastic. And if people want to reach out and find you, where's the best place for them to get you?
Oh, maybe I don't know. Bellevue, Washington. Well, I mean, VIOME.com. There's lots of stuff happening there with videos and things and education information, stuff like that. They can email me at Stephen@VIOME.com, and happy to give them more information about things they can be thinking about. I'm on Instagram. I don't do much Facebook, LinkedIn, those kind of things.
Okay, fantastic. Well, look, thank you so much for being here today
and
providing the insight of what you and Naveen and the entire team are up to and the difference that you're actually making in the quality of people's lives.
Yep, and we have fun doing it. So that's a great thing for us. We really enjoy it.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you.